All right. Good evening, everyone. Hope everybody's having a great day. Thank you very much for joining us today. Before we get into the conversation itself, kindly part up and share the live. We're streaming on, of course, here on TikTok, but also on YouTube, Facebook, X, and Twitch. Kindly like and share the live stream. There's something quite interesting. I don't know if the guy who wrote this in the comment section, if he's still here. It's quite interesting, to be honest. So he wrote something like there's similarity with Igbo Zoriki. I think there's a problem with I think you might have a little issue with self-esteem, so there are many cultures in the world that have something similar. So I think you could talk to folks in South Africa, right? So that the Zulus or the Sothos, and I'm very sure they wouldn't mind, telling you about the similarities. There are many groups. I mean, all the people on this earth walk on two limbs, two legs. Does that mean? I mean, there's no big deal about that. You can't use that as a basis of sameness. We are not the same, and that should be fine if you don't have any problems with your self-esteem. All right, thanks everyone for being here. I'm just going to check our platform to be sure we're good, and then we can get right into the conversation. Today we're listening to a conversation we had a while back, where we talked about it was a question, really. Somebody asked a question that got us into this conversation, but I think it's important to listen again, right? Especially because, like we say, our live sessions, sometimes there are so many topics covered in one session, so we break it out, and then hopefully when we have sessions like this, we can get to listen to each of them, in their own right. Well, thank you very much for being here. If you're on TikTok, I really need you to power tap. Thank you. And also share the live. Folks on YouTube, kindly like and share the live. Thank you very, very much. All right. Okay, so today we're discussing referendum, marginalization, £20, and Igbo presidency. What's really going on? So someone asked a question. Well, someone said something that led to this conversation. I think it's important to listen again. So we're going to start by reading the description. But again, before I do that, let's all like and share. All right, regardless of the platform. If you're on X, kindly like and repost. That would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. All right. Referendum, marginalization, £20, and the Igbo presidency. What's really going on? I'm just going to read the description, then we'll listen to the entire thing. Every time someone says the Igbo should be allowed to go, it sounds like there's a force holding them back. But the truth is, no one is stopping anyone. Those who genuinely want out know what steps to take. They have seen the process and they know it well. The problem is, many are not really chasing secession. They're chasing power, specifically the Nigerian presidency. Over the years, the quote-unquote "we are marginalized" narrative has become a political tool. It gets sympathy, headlines, and attention. But politics does not respond to tears. It responds to structures, alliances, and strategy. Power is not given to those who cry the loudest. It goes to those who can build coalitions and play the game smartly. Nigeria's presidency is not won through emotion. It is won through influence, negotiation, and collective interest. The victim card might open conversations, but it will never open Aso Rock. It is time for some real political maturity, less noise, more work. I'd like us to please like and share the live while you're listening. Today's topic is referendum, marginalization, £20, and the Igbo presidency. I'm sure you're gonna have a great time listening. So enjoy while you, of course, please power tap and share. Particularly if you're on TikTok, because that's the only way we can keep this live going on this app, knowing the kind of app we do. Thank you very much. enjoy the tape or the clip. All right, we'll talk later. Quickly respond to some of the things in the comment section. Someone says, can we push the referendum for them? No, we can't, and I'll tell you why. So you have a person who is not ready to do anything. He's not ready to leave. He's just huffing and puffing. It's all smoke. There's nothing. There's no substance to his rant. He's saying he wants to leave. His representatives are not pushing for that thing. He insults people on social media and says, what is it, this about the Southwest, all this Lagos, all this Nigeria, we don't even want it. Then somebody says, you must go. Then they say the person is a bigot. You say you want to leave. I say you can go. Now you're calling me a bigot. It means that you never wanted to leave in the first place. You're just a clown. As a matter of fact, clowns have more sense than that. The point is, it's not really about that thing you think they want. It's leverage for something else. Somebody came in the other time and said, let me read what he said, because I don't know if you guys think about this thing before you say it. Mr. Goodman, you call yourself. You said, why can't you guys accept that there is a great injustice against the Igbo since after the war? Tell me that injustice. What is that injustice that has been meted out to Igbo people since 1970? Tell me. You had the vice presidency in 79. The only thing you have not had since 70 is presidency. And that thing is not a toy. We're not in a gift shop where you can just take. This is not Oprah. This is not Oprah Winfrey's TV show. Hey, you get to be president. You also get to be president. So, Yoruba people president, Hausa president, Igbo president. There is no gift shop here. And the Hausas have not been president since 1999. As a matter of fact, they're not president ever. There's no Hausa president in Nigeria's history. Why should there be an Igbo presidency? Why should there be a Yoruba presidency? And I've said these things several times. I should repeat it. Let me just say something, guys. There is no ethnic group in Nigeria, sincerely, that has any leverage over Nigeria in terms of presidency. So when you say things like, and you wrote it, I knew that was where you were going. You know, we've been doing this thing for a bit. You said, why is that they're not, if I let me read to you so that it doesn't look like I'm quoting you out of context. I'll read it one by one. First, you said, but why can't you guys accept that there is a great injustice against the Igbos since after the war? I said, what's the great injustice? I knew where you were going, and I mentioned it. Then you wrote in the comment section, you said here, how many Igbos have been president? Two. Two Igbos have been president. Our very first one, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and the one that destroyed everything, like what your brothers are trying to do right now. You don't see. I'll say what I was going to say earlier. No part of Nigeria has any leverage over Nigeria as a whole in 2025. In 1970, Nigeria ended the war that lasted 2.5 months. It was for 30 months, from 67 July to January of 70. They came up with the idea of no victor, no vanquished. They came up with reconstruction and all of those things in the Southeast, which happened, by the way. Your elders may have lied to you that nothing was done in the Southeast. Please look for the name. Look up the name Ukwabi Asika. His son is one of the major people in entertainment today. He owns Storm Records, Obi Asika. Look up the name Ukwabi Asika and what he did in rebuilding the East Central State. And look for how he got the money that he used, where those monies came from. I've said it before, I'll say it again very quickly. The money, primarily, of course, came from the federal government. The months when they were fighting, right, Aula was the federal minister of finance and was the highest civilian in government, go figure. He saved the money of 66, the worst of 67, July 6, 67, the war started. The monies that should be going to the East Central State, royalties, allocation, and things like that, were being kept by the Minister of Finance, who was Awo. You know what? Now that we are here, I'm going to read to you what Awo said. 1983, Papa was in Abeokuta for campaign, right? And he had somebody come to him to talk about the Southeast. And people don't talk about this. There are two places you can find what I'm about to read right now. Okay, this book. Go on. The biography, should take it slowly. The biography of a soldier statesman. This book by J. Isawa Eligo. I'll read this later, but let me start with Papa. I'm going to that thing about leverage later. Sorry, I mean, since after the war, the Igbos were given only 20 pounds to live with. Is that not injustice? Jesus Christ. Guys, do you mind? Do you mind, guys? I can't. You know what? I'll bring people up, you talk. We'll continue the series, right? We'll do that later. Let's answer some of these things because it's irritating. But let's start with the one. You just brought another one. Good man. Where should we start? Let's start with the money thing. During the war, this is Awo, 1983. During the war, I saw to it that the revenue which was due to the Igbo land, southeastern state, they called it, East Central state, they called it at the time. By the way, southeastern state back then is present-day Akwa Ibom and Cross River state. East Central is the 5 southeastern states today. And then you had River State. During the war, I saw to it that the revenue which was due to the Igbo land, East Central state, I kept it. I saved the money for them. And when they were liberated, I handed over the money to them, millions. If I had decided to do so, I could have kept the money away from them. And then when they took over, I saw to it that subvention was given to them at the rate of £990,000 every month. I was saved millions. That should, I mean, every other region was getting every other state got their own allocation. He saved the one that was supposed to go to the East Central state and put it in bulk, gave it to the people who built after the whole thing was over. And the very first administrator of the East Central state was Okwabi Asika, and has been credited for being one of the people who rebuilt spaces very fast. Like he did it at the very, very fast rate. Let's put it that way. And if you don't mind, at some point I'll go and I'll read what Okwabi Asika actually said. It's in a book called Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria by A.H.M. Kedrin. So if there's time, I'll read that later. So here, I was always saying that everything that went to other states, the ones that belong to the 5 Igbo states of today, he kept that money and gave it to the administrator after the war. That's one. Number two, they gave a subvention of £990,000 every month. Every month. Okay, let me finish that one. I didn't go to the Executive Council to ask for support or for approval because I knew if I went to the Executive Council at that time, the subvention would not be approved because there were more enemies in the Executive Council for the Igbos than friends. And since I wasn't going to take a percentage from what I was going to give them, and I knew what I was doing was right, I wanted the states to survive. I kept on giving the subvention, 990,000, almost a million every month. And I did that for other states, of course, southeastern states, north central states, Kwara, and so on. But I did that for the Igbos. And when the war was over, I saw to it that the ACB, that's African Continental Bank, the ACB got £3.5 million to start with. Not money they worked for, money that the government gave for one reason, so that traders will be able to access loans to begin again. I saw to it that the ACB got £3.5 million to start with. This was distributed immediately, and I gave another sum of money. The attitude of the experts, officials at the time of the ACB was that ACB should be closed down. And I held the view you couldn't close the ACB down because by the way, that's Nnamdi Azikiwe's bank. The one that they used to siphon £877,000 in 1955. But that's another day's topic. The attitude of the experts, officials at the time of the ACB was that ACB should be closed down. And I held the view you couldn't close the ACB down because that is the bank that gives finance to the Igbo traders. And if you close it down, they will find it difficult to revive or to survive. So it was given. I did the same thing for the Cooperative Bank of Eastern Nigeria to rehabilitate all these places. And I saw to it as a Commissioner for Finance that no obstacle was placed in the way of the Ministry of Economic Planning in planning for rehabilitation of the war-affected areas. 1 second. I need to find that page. I want to read something to you from Gowon's biography. The point here is this: what Awo did, your elders never tell you. Why? Because they need to push the narrative that he hates you. If you believe that, it's not your elder's fault, it's your fault, because you're supposed to have a brain. You can't be old to be sure. All right, the book is called Gowon, The Biography of a Soldier Statesman, written by Professor J. Sawelaigo, who passed on earlier this year. May so rest in peace. So let's work with this. By the way, if you want to know about Ukwabi Asika, there are 3 books you should read. This one, The Biography of a Soldier Statesman. Read Obasanjo's My Command, because Obasanjo was the one who recommended Ukwabi Asika, who was in UI at the time. And then the last book is The Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria. I'll read that later. Let me finish this one. With the end of the Civil War, one of the most immediate demands on Gowon's government was one of providing relief for the suffering masses of the newly affected areas. The need for shelter, food, and medicines for the war-affected population became more glaring than ever. To further complicate issues was the simultaneous necessity for rehabilitation and reconstruction to restore electricity, water, transport, and communications. So also was there the urgent need to resettle farms, reopen factories, and facilitate the resumption of normal economic life. There was no doubt that Gowon had anticipated these problems. The appointment of Mr. Ukwabi Asika, an Igbo lecturer at Ibadan, to coordinate relief materials and see to refugee problems of the East Central State was a blessing to the Igbos. True enough, Ukwabi Asika stands vilified today among many Igbo people. He, for some, had betrayed the Igbo cause, and after the war had mismanaged the affairs of the state. Asika's acceptance of the job was a demonstration of singular courage and belief in principles. Even with a price tag set on his head by Ojuku's secessionist government, Asika went on to do his job undaunted. He helped a great deal later to alleviate the sufferings of the Igbos. By the end of the Civil War, Mr. Ukwabi Asika had re-established administrative structures in his East Central State, of which he became the administrator. His government provided a sense of direction amidst confusion, courage amidst despair, predictability amidst fluidity, and solace and support amidst misery and abject poverty. In this, Gowon's support for Asika's government was most essential, as was the immense cooperation of the military. Human memories being too short, perhaps not many Igbos have pondered and imagined what would have happened without Asika's preparatory work in Igbo land, even while the war raged on. It made the job of resettlement, reconciliation, and rehabilitation much easier than this could have been. Apart from this appointment of Mr. Asika and giving support to him, Gowon also authorized the establishment of Abandoned Properties Committee in all states to administer and collect rent on all properties belonging to Igbos who had abandoned such properties during the 1967 to 70 crisis. Many Igbos returned after the war to huge sums of money, which helped to resettle them. In some cases, there were problems of restoration of properties. The Rivers State case vividly demonstrated the residual legacies of pre-war bitterness in the system. One of these days, we can have another session to discuss what really happened with the abandoned properties and the case of Rivers State. By the end of 1971, quite an appreciable amount of work had been done with regard to rehabilitation, reconstruction, and resettlement. About 120 million naira worth of cash and materials had been expended on rehabilitation work in Nigeria within the period 1970 to 1971. The value of assistance from abroad was estimated at 64.6 million naira. University of Nsukka received 12 million for reconstruction. 6 million was spent on rehabilitation of industries. The African Continental Bank was granted 5 million naira for its reopening. This is what I was looking for. I found it. Sorry, guys. It took a while. Took us a while, but we're finally here. We are here. So here's what I was trying to get to. Awo said he gave 3.5 billion, the first payment to ACB. They're saying here that eventually it was 5 million naira. The point is this. Folks from the Southeast do not know what the government did. So the only thing they talk about is the fact that government owes them something and nothing was done to help them because your parents or your folks did not tell you the truth. They didn't tell you the truth. Now, you said the 20 pounds. Let me explain the 20 pounds. I can't believe I want to do this again. I did it last week. There are 3 groups of people as far as the 20 pounds was concerned. Number one, very few people were banked. Very few people used banks in Nigeria in 1966, 67. Very few people. Let's start with that one. Let's stop deceiving ourselves. Very few people use banks. That's number one. Number two, everyone who had bank accounts and could prove the fact that they had bank accounts, they got their monies back. E.g., the former Governor General of our Ndigbo. What's his name now? As if I can remember his name. He did a video on him, himself and his brother. Their father was called by Barclays Bank and informed that he had £6,000 after the war with interest. His surname started with N. John Nwodo. Is Nwodo. Now, yes, Nwodo. I have a video here, but we're not going to play it because of time. He mentioned that his father was called by Barclays Bank, and they told him that, listen, you have £6,000, and it's proof, right, that those who had a way to prove that they had money in banks were able to get their money back in full, in some cases with interest. That's number one. Give me a second. I'm going to play you his video so that way we're all on the same page. Take a listen to this gentleman. His name again is Chief John Nwodo, John Nwodo, who was a former president of Ndigbo. Take a listen, please.
Of that £6,000 that was left in the money, my father discovered it 6 months after the war, when the manager of Barclays Bank then, which is now Union Bank, called him and revealed to him that he had £6,000 plus interest, which were not tampered with during the course of the war. My dad then decided to buy a Mercedes lorry bus. That time in the Southeast, all the vehicles that were there had been used during the war, and many had been cannibalized, and the few that survived were smoking or hardly in any good condition to traverse state territories. There was no farming throughout the war, and a lot of people who were compressed in few communities where the war did not reach did not have enough food cultivated in those communities to sustain them. So all the food that were coming to the east were brought from the west and the north, principally from the north.
That's the man talking about what happened to his father. £6,000 in 1970, 6 months after the war. So if you had your money, you had passbooks, you will get your money back. Like I said, there are 3 categories. The second category were people who went with Nigerian pound before January 1968. And what happened was that Ojukwu, be like say, go hear him for yourself. The case of the money they said that was not given to them, you know, during the war, all the pounds were looted. They printed Biafran currency notes, which they circulated at the close of the war. Some people wanted the Biafran notes. I'll explain later. Yeah. The banks were looted. There are 3 banks that were looted here. It says Port Harcourt, Calabar, and found it. It's on record that Ojukwu admitted that 2 things defeated him in this war. That is, at the day he left Biafra, he said, 1, the change of currency. He said that was the first thing that defeated him, and we did that to prevent Ojukwu taking the money which his soldiers stole from our central bank for sale abroad to buy arms. We discovered he looted our central bank in Benin, looted the one in Port Harcourt, looted the one in Calabar, and was taking the currency notes abroad to sell to earn foreign exchange to buy arms. So I decided to change the currency. So the point basically is this: he stole money from these banks. I was going to use the money to buy weapons to fight Nigeria, whose money he stole. And while he was doing, by the way, the soldiers did not just do it, he commanded them to do it. If you want to know another source, you'll find it. Read Adewale Ademoyega's Why We Struck. He actually mentioned exactly how it was done. And if you also read this book, Colonel Victor Banjo, The Revolutionary Betrayed. Anyway, if once they notice that this guy has stolen money, they change the currency so that they could protect Nigeria, right? So if you had your money and During the time Nigeria changed the currency, you did not submit your old money to get the new currency, like the old design to get the new Nigerian pounds. Your money was Otilonie. And there's a woman, her name is Angela Okori. She had an interview with CNN some years ago, and she mentioned how she, although she was in Igbo land, was able to change her own money. This was even during the war. She changed her money and she was selling potash, she was selling cigarettes and weed and all kinds of things. That's the second group. The third group were the people who took the Nigerian pounds, gave it to Ojukwu, and collected Biafran pounds from him. And after the war was over, now took the Biafran pounds to Nigeria and said, Nigeria, take Biafran pounds, will give us Naira. Say, what's happening? Now, what's the value of the Biafran pounds? It's not like, okay, it's just, okay, what's it benchmarked on? Like, is it gold? No. Is it dollar? No. It's just vibes. Vibes and inshallah. That's what the currency is based on. So what's the value of this thing? Someone said tissue paper. Tissue paper was worth more than Biafran pounds. Just in it's not even worth the cost of the thing they used to print on it. Like, it was worthless. So how exactly was I just supposed to pay for the I mean, the person you gave your money to run to Cote d'Ivoire, why should Nigeria be the one paying you for you taking your money and giving it to someone else? So what did Awolowo do? Awolowo, the benevolent, he said, you know what, let's give these people 20 pounds so that at least they'll be able to use it to, it's an ex gratia payment, not a debt owed to the Igbos. It was something done based on magnanimity. It was a benevolent act. Like, these are our brothers, they're going to start again. Let's give. And it's not all of them that had bank accounts, one. Number two, it's not all of them that didn't come to change their money in Nigeria. Number three, if you put your money and give it to Ojukwu, why should I be the one to bear the brunt of that? And like I said, if you study the American Civil War, after the Civil War, they didn't give the South nothing. They didn't give the South nothing. The South lost, and that was it. Nigeria is the one where they will give people money, and if they give money, will sit down, oh, you that's a carry Joe. You know, if you give somebody something and the person says it's too small, you tell the person to give it back to you. I'm Yoruba. That's what we do in Yoruba land. If I give you something and say, it's too small, my friend told me there. Oh, it's something you should be grateful for. Like, your generation should be grateful that a man like that thought it wise that, listen, these people are in the same country. Let's also, help them to get started. Meanwhile, he had ensured that 3.5 million pounds got to ACB, that's African Continental Bank, so that you will be able to access it and use the loans. And send all that money to Cooperative Bank of Eastern Nigeria. Nobody talks about this in the Southeast. It's always crying. So 20 pounds was something that was done out of, benevolence. I don't know why you think it's a problem, but if you think it's a problem, you guys should gather it together and send it back. Lastly, what I really wanted to say before you ask that other question is this. There's no region in Nigeria that has any leverage over Nigeria. You fought a war, you lost. There's nothing like no victor, no vanquished. It's a mistake of our elders. And they did it because they were trying to do good people, great nation. And it's okay. Like Professor Dora Quinley, the blessed. That woman was blessed. She used to say good people, great nation. So that was why they did it. No victor, no vanquished. But to be honest, you were vanquished. Nigeria was victor. And here's the problem. The reason I'm saying that, because if we don't tell you that, which is the mistake of our parents, I used to talk about 3 V's. I added another one, making 4. There are 4 V's. There's victor, there's vanquished, there's victim, there's villain. And the 2 things will happen because there's a vacuum. The truth is, you're not the victor. You didn't win anything. You will not want to be called the vanquished because you have pride, which is natural and is okay. You should have been called that. But because you were not called that, you have now made yourself, the vacuum now exists. You now put something in the vacuum, is victimhood. You now say you are the victim and you make the Nigerians villains. We're not villains. We helped you. My fathers helped you. Maxwell, your parents are burning, like you are writing in the comment section. I'm talking about your parents and your elders in your family. Continue. Where was I? After you lost the war, 9 years after you lost the war, you produced the vice president of Nigeria. That doesn't happen very easily. 9 years. Your parents, Maxwell, your parents lost the war, and Nigeria still made sure that by the 1979 elections, the three major parties that ran had an Igbo on their tickets. 1979. There was NPN, Shehu Shagari, had an Igbo vice presidential candidate, Alex Ekweme. There was NNA, had an Igbo presidential candidate, Azikiwe. There was UPN, had Obafemi Awolowo as the presidential candidate, and his vice president was Philip Umeadi. Igbo. The three major parties in 1979 had Igbos either as presidential candidates or as vice presidential candidates. So no matter what happened, they had something 9 years after the war, and they got Alex Ekweme became vice president. How many? If you had won, you'd have killed all of us. How do I know? Read the letter that Ojukwu wrote to Victor Banjo. I will take everywhere from Lagos to Jeba. Read Anthony Enauro's speech, 12th August 1968 at Addis Ababa. What they were planning to do in the north after taking everywhere and destroying everywhere. They had no shame. They had no good plan for anybody, just to destroy everyone and take over everybody's lands. But Nigeria was like, you know what, let's bring everybody back together. 9 years after the war, you had a vice president. You cannot use the war for anything anymore. There's no leverage like, oh, we went through the war. You heal. You got a president 9 years after, a vice president 9 years after the war. Anything else is going to be based on the game, political game. And if you're not a politician, leave it to them. They will find a way to play their politics. You don't understand it, leave it alone. But don't expect that you come here and be saying, we went through the war, why are we not president? If you're not president, because you cannot become president based on just vibes and say, oh, I lost, make you what? Someone say vice president is nothing, almost powerless. And go and look for your president that has, who told Nantazikwe not to win the election? Should we give it to him because he's Igbo? We already gave three. In other words, no matter what happens, one of you will win something. Vice president here, presidential candidate here, vice president here. 3. Again, Alex Ekweme, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Philip Umeadi. 1-1. At least one did. If you're not happy with that, that's your business. It also goes to show how ungrateful you are. That's one. Number 2. Me, I'm Yoruba. We don't even have that leverage as Yoruba people. We had an issue in 1993 when the election was annulled, MK Abiola's election. So 99, they said, you know what, this guy, let's just allow Yoruba people to have it. And even with that, in PDP, Alex Ekweme still went for primaries, even though he wasn't supposed to. Still went to become president. Anyway, we got that. And since that time, we have kept quiet. If you want to play the game, nobody says, oh, because of 1993, make me president. The South had their own stuff. By 2007, they were also settled with vice presidential candidate. I mean, the reason Goodluck Jonathan became vice president was to settle the old war that was happening in South. And you came and said vice president means nothing. Well, thank God for people like Jonathan and Ijaw people. They know that it means something. And they took advantage of it. And so when what happened, sadly, he finished the term. But beyond finishing the term, he won. You wouldn't win because you're not grateful for the little you were given. How would you win? Just tears. Oh, you owe us. Nobody owes anybody anything in this country. May God bless all of us. Every Nigeria is blessed. Every country, every region is blessed. Nobody owes you anything. The East has gotten what they should get based on the war. The Southwest got what we're supposed to get based on the annulment. The South got what they were going to get based on the agitation. And that's it. Any other person, you come to the field of play, you play. If you lose, you lose. You try again. And that's why, I don't know if you guys have even sat down to even think. You tried something once, Peter Obi, and since that day you have been hating on everybody. What should Buhari do? Buhari tried 3 times, 12 years of his life. The first time he contested was 2003. He didn't win until 2015. 4 cycles. He lost the first time, even though he had 12 million votes, way more than what your Messiah had. He tried again. He had lots of votes, but he didn't have the 2/3 in all the circles in Nigeria. He tried again. It was the 4th try that he won. You tried once, you lost. You say it's because of your ethnicity. Are you not dumb? If you lost, you try again. And if you lost again, you try again. Do you know how motivational speaker Abraham Lincoln? You keep trying. Or like we have our own, shall we have Buhari? You try. You lose, you try. You win. Praise God. If you lose, you try again. But to now say because you had one war, people should vote for you. How does that help Nigeria? The fact that you went through suffering. Have you even healed? Somebody say Atiku has not won. Atiku has not won. He's been trying. Have you ever heard him come around and say, oh, it's because I'm from Adamawa, that's why they hate me? This thing is they said it's retarded. I'll finish answering your question. Don't ask any other one. I'm not answering again. I hope with these few points of mine, I hope you got the point. And if you don't got the point, there's no point. But I hope you got the point. But I'm not expecting you to get it because some of you don't want to get the point. But the truth is, Nigeria will no longer be blackmailed. Be content with anything, no matter what happens. Someone says, but Nigerians should not give Igbo chance to be president. Let me not see. Let's just leave it alone. Let's just leave it alone. Maybe the question should be asking. Let me even ask you a question. This guy. How come Northwest, South, all 80 Igbos, they should think of it? If everybody is hating you, maybe there's something wrong with you. Everybody can't be hating you. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever studied, have you ever studied what happened when you were president? I am good man. Is that your name? Have you ever studied what happened when you were president? Let me give you an assignment. It's not too much. Study recruitment into civil service. Just 2 things, not too many. Federal civil service, recruitment to federal civil service, 1, and the ambassadors in Nigeria between 1960 and 1964, and between January 66 and July 66. Then come back and tell me if anybody that went through that at your hands will want you to come and rule over them again. That's the answer. If you like, whatever you think is fine. Thank you very much. I hope I answered your question. Somebody said I will spend a lot of time answering it. I know I did, but I just wanted to. No matter how much you explain, their mind has been projected to reject the truth. The truth of the matter, Ebenezer, let me even say this. I don't repeat these things necessarily because of people that ask the question. I know they're not answering to get the answers. But I need Nigerians to be equipped. Where you can have compassion on people and say, oh, you went through this, that's so sad. Oh, yeah. But the person will not be able to use that against you and say, because I went through this, you must give me what is yours. Or because I went through this, you must give me this. The only reason we have been blackmailed for many months or many years is that we are mostly ignorant about these things. The answer is not really for him. That's why I said, whether he gets it, he may not get it, that's fine. The point is that those of us who are Yoruba, who are Hausa, who are different ethnic groups, should know what happened so that your empathy will not be weaponized. In other words, be compassionate, be empathetic. Feel the pain that the Igbos went through, and they went through terrible stuff, right? Feel that pain, and then see, and that's what Nigeria did. If we have time, we can read. I would have read this book and read to you how Nigerians were putting clothes. Forget government. Nigerians, especially in Yoruba land, were gathering clothes to send to the southeast. Why? Because they were empathetic. Why would people have houses abandoned, right? Leave for the southeast, come back months later and discover that they had rent? Because their Yoruba neighbors, not 1, not 2, the Yoruba neighbors took over those houses, refurbished those houses, rented those houses out, and they collected the money and kept the money for 2.5 years. And when the Igbo neighbors got back to Lagos, to Ibadan, gave them the money. And yet you have the children of these ones insulting me. Do you not know that insulting me is bringing a curse on you and your generation? Like when you insult Yoruba people, after all the things that their fathers did for you, you are cursed. Not because they are cursing you, but because you are ungrateful. How many houses were taken over in Yoruba land? Not one. Not one. The most famous example is the one that involved the same Alex Okoma I mentioned earlier, the former vice president. His building. It was Shubobin Balogun, the owner of FCMB, who took over his house and saw that was going, derelict, and people were, boys were using the place and constituting nuisance. Fixed it up, rented it out, took the money, gave it when this guy got back from the southeast, gave him the money. In different parts of Yoruba land, I've read stuff. I've had people send messages to me. Once told me about, I think I talked about this last week. The mother, a neighbor went to the mother and gave the mother all his sewing stuff, machine and stuff, and then she hid these things. Anyway, he came after the war, and he wasn't, according to her, he wasn't really expecting anything. But what she did was she went to hide. It was like a well, like a dry well, where she had kept everything belonging to that guy or to that family. They got back, everything was given back to them. And their generations, their children are the ones insulting Yoruba people and saying that you gave us this, we hate you, you hate us. What kind of nonsense is this? If they hated you, we have videos of Yoruba elders asking for Igbos to come back. And I said it the other day. I did a video on it some time ago. There's a video, I intentionally did those two videos at the same time. There's a video of Yoruba elders in 1970 saying Igbos should come back. And the interviewer, British, was like, oh, but they did something, they wanted to break the country and everything. You know what Yoruba elders were doing? They were making excuses for them. They're like, oh, no. They were deceived. They're good people. It's just their leaders that, deceived them. And they were misinformed. That's the word. They were misinformed. They are good people, want them back. That same month, I also have another video of an interview in Port Harcourt. And those men said it clearly. We don't want them back. Thank you, Babati. That's the word. They were misled. Not misinformed. They were misled. Said they were misled. They were misled. It was just one of those things. Want them back. That same month in Port Harcourt, we have the video of another interview of men saying we don't want Igbos back. So you put the two videos together and you're like, why would you curse me?
They will like you so much, though, after all this.
But I can say that we know that we like them.
Do you feel it will be easy to integrate them in Nigeria now?
They are already Nigerians.
What?
They are already Nigerians. We never disputed.
Well, they disputed it, though, didn't they?
No, they didn't dispute.
Well,
They were misled.
Well, they set up a country of their own, called it Biafra.
They were misled, not that they...
Oh, they were misled.
They were misled. And they've now seen the light.
What of the Igbos, though we are all one Nigeria, but they misbehave themselves, and we feel at the moment, at this time, they should remain in their East Central state.
You don't think there is a place for them to work down here now?
At the moment, I don't think so.
Do you think it will come in the future?
That future can tell.
But not now?
Not now.
It was a mistake our elders made. Maybe the folks in Port Harcourt knew how to treat people better. Maybe folks in the north, maybe they knew how to treat people better. Maybe your people were just too emotional and too whatever. I don't know. But I prefer that, by the way. Even if it makes me look soft, I'll still leave that way because I don't want my children to grow up with hate and contempt. But guess what? There are certain people in Nigeria, it's those who have contempt for them that they have respect for. Which is, shall be careful in Yoruba land, because all this nonsense, you did something for. What did I do for you? You should be thanking me for throughout your lifetime. When you hear yo, before you hear Yoruba, whether it's yo-yo or yogurt, once you hear yo, just say, Father, I thank you for those people. That you should be doing. But no, ingrates. I'm not saying everybody is like this, by the way, but I think it's a rule that you must be a victim, and not to be a victim, you have to blame others. And when you look around to blame people, you always blame the people that are close to you, even for things they never did. This is a rule. There are Igbos who are not like this. They are the exception. But the rule is that you must be the victim. And if you don't know how you're like this, I'm sorry, guys. I know I'm spending time. If it's going to help somebody, listen. Victimhood in Igbo land has nothing to do with Nigerian civil war. If you're Igbo, you should know it. If you're not Igbo, please know it. Victimhood in the Southeast has nothing to do with Nigerian civil war. Victimhood is a strategy that the Southeast has deployed since the 1940s. It was so bad that the Governor General of Nigeria had to complain about it in 1947. We have the record. The book is somewhere here. I just want to open because of time. I want other people to speak. It's a strategy. Oh, see what you have done to us. See what you have done to us. 47, the man was complaining. 49. Look at Nnamdi Azikiwe's speech in Asaba. So in Abba, he's blaming the people that are close to you. The General of Nigeria had to complain about it in 1947. We have the record. The book is somewhere here. I just want to open because of time. I want other people to speak. It's a strategy. Oh, see what you have done to us. See what you have done to us. 47, the man was complaining. 49. Look at Nnamdi Azikiwe's speech in Asaba. So in Abba, 1949 Abba. In that speech, Azikiwe was still forming victim. What did the Governor General say in 47? He said, these people contribute the least in terms of revenue, but they demand for more and more. They clamor, that's the word, they clamor for more and more of everything. We are marginalized, we are marginalized, we are marginalized. That's what it means. It's not because there's marginalization, it's because it's a strategy that works. Read Azikiwe's 49 speech. He said, oh, we have been taxed without representation. They've taken our stuff. First, they said that they are the biggest in Africa. God has specially created the Igbo race to lead the tree of Africa from the bondage of the ages. They are Aryan race of black world, whatever that is. Then he went on to say, oh, they didn't give us this. They've taken our taxes to develop other places. And like, taxes from where? 2 years ago, the government was just complaining about the fact that you are contributing the least. Taxes from where? And I hear the same thing today, even on social media. You hear people say things like, oh, you are using oil. You're using our oil money to develop Lagos. Oil from the southeast. The southeast produces 2.1% of crude oil in Nigeria. Lagos alone produces more about 2.5. And Lagos is not even a major oil producer. The entire southeastern state that produce anything called crude oil, Anambra, Abia, Imo, combined 2.1%. Edo State produces about 2.3, 2.4. Lagos is about 2.5, 2.6. Ondo is about 3.8, between 3.8 and 4.3. That's Ondo State. Then you have the big boys, Delta, Akwa Ibom, Rivers, Bayelsa. How can three states that produce 2.1% say Lagos is using their money when Lagos actually produces more oil than the three states combined? You don't think about this thing because it's a rhetoric that you have to just keep saying. You hate us, you are blackmailing us, you are marginalizing us, you are your victims, you are this. I'm like, you are not a victim. You come up. All right. We're not victims, and ethnic groups in Nigeria are not victims. It's time to begin to think differently. But I noticed some things in the comment section. I see some people asking questions. I'm going to get to that in a bit. But before we do that, there's something I mentioned in the video. I referred to many books, but one of those books is Go On, the biography of a soldier statesman, written by Professor Isawa Eligo. All right, so I'm just going to read some of the things from here. Maybe another day we'll have a session to discuss the efforts that Nigeria made to give the what we call Southeast right now what was referred to as the 3 R's: reconciliation, reconstruction, and rehabilitation. We're going to have a session on that, and when the time comes, we're going to visit a number of materials, a number of books to understand that particular period in Nigeria's history. Now, before I read this, let me say something. Someone wrote something on, the comment section of one of the videos on YouTube, and So something is happening in Nigeria. Why are you not talking about that? So number one, I think it's important to understand this. Platforms are created for different purposes. We talk about the news, but we also talk about history. And history, to be honest, we do more history than news. And I think it's a way that people try to use to deflect or to say, just keep quiet, don't talk about it. For many years, we were complaining that we don't know our history. Nobody talks about Nigeria's history. It's just they don't teach it in schools. People were bickering and all that. Well, now we have the opportunity to study this history. And people are saying, oh, why not talk about what's happening right now? Well, if you want to know what's happening right now, go and watch channels. All right, we can talk about what's happening right now, but it's not going to stop us from discussing history. Now, why do we do this? That's the question. It's not to demonize any group, whether it's Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Fulani, Birom, Ibibi, or whatever ethnic group. That's not the point. But certain things that need to be highlighted will be highlighted. And I've said it several times. What I think I owe people is respect. Because that's who I am, right? I'm not going to allow any clown change that. But to tell people to shut up because you feel uncomfortable with the truth, that one is on you. That's not going to happen, all right? Having said that, I'd like to read something to you from the book by J. Isao Elago. This book is called Go On, The Biography of a Soldier Statesman. So this portion has to do with the 3 R's: reconciliation, reconstruction, and rehabilitation. I'm going to read a bit of it, and then we'll move on to the questions in the comment section. All right? Thank you very much. So let's start with this. With the end of the Civil War, one of the most immediate demands on Gowon's government was one of providing relief for the suffering masses of the newly affected areas. The need for shelter, food, and medicines for the war-affected population became more glaring than ever. To further complicate issues was the simultaneous necessity for rehabilitation and reconstruction to restore electricity, water, transport, and communications. So also was there the urgent need to resettle farms, reopen factories, and facilitate the resumption of normal economic life. There was no doubt that Gowon had anticipated these problems. The appointment of Mr. Ukpabia Sika, an Igbo lecturer at Ibadan, to coordinate relief matters and see to refugee problems of the East Central State was a blessing to the Igbos. I'm going to have another session on Ukpabia Sika, and like I mentioned in that video, we're going to read this book again. We'll read My Command by Olusegun Obasanjo. We'll read Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria by A.H.M. Green. I think it's important for people to know about him and what he did, because you cannot acknowledge him and still say that the federal government did nothing in the East. That would be an oxymoron. You're literally contradicting yourself, because it was known to have done a lot because it was the administration towards the end of the war. So he says here, there was no doubt that Gowon had anticipated these problems. The appointment of Mr. Ukpabia Sika, an Igbo lecturer at Ibadan, that's in UI, to coordinate relief matters and see to refugee problems of the East Central State was a blessing to the Igbos. True enough, Ukpabia Sika stands vilified today among many people. Sorry, I'll take that again. True enough, Ukpabia Sika stands vilified today among many Igbo people. Why? Because it was against the war that was unaliving his people. It's a crazy thing. The one who gets people dying and dead is celebrated. The one who wants to free them from that carnage is vilified. Oh boy. He, that's Ukpabia Sika, for some had betrayed the Igbo cause, and after the war had mismanaged affairs of that state. Asika's acceptance of the job was a demonstration of singular courage and belief in principles. Even with a price tag set on his head by Ojuku's secessionist government, Asika went on to do his job undaunted. He helped a great deal later to alleviate the sufferings of Igbos. By the end of the Civil War, Mr. Ukpabia Sika had re-established administrative structures in the East Central State, of which he became the administrator. His government provided a sense of direction amidst confusion, courage amidst despair, predictability amidst fluidity, and solace and support amidst misery and abject poverty. In these, Gowon's support for Asika's government was most essential, as was the immense cooperation of the military. Human memories being too short, Perhaps not many Igbos have pondered and imagined what would have happened without Asika's preparatory work in Igbo land, even while the war raged on. It made the job of resettlement, reconciliation, and rehabilitation much easier than this could have been. Apart from this appointment of Mr. Asika and giving support to him, Gowon also authorized the establishment of abandoned properties committees in all states to administer and collect rent on all properties belonging to Igbos who had abandoned such properties during the 1966 to 1970 crisis. And we talked about what happened that in Yoruba land. We talked about that in the video. We also mentioned what happened in other places. There were cases of abandoned properties, close to the Igbos, especially in the Port Harcourt. But none of such happened in Yoruba land. Let's just read a few more things. Again, while the war was on, Gowon, anticipating the enormity of rehabilitation work, established the National Rehabilitation Commission by Decree Number 41. This commission, under its first commissioner, Mr. Timothy Omobare, had the responsibility for the collection. Please pay attention to this. You don't usually hear this in mainstream media, but it's true. I'll take it from the beginning. While the war was on, Gowon, anticipating the enormity of rehabilitation work, established the National Rehabilitation Commission by Decree Number 41. This commission, under its first commissioner, Mr. Timothy Omobare, had the responsibility for the collection and distribution of drugs and other humanitarian gifts from foreign governments and from international and non-governmental agencies. This committee was very functional to the achievement of rehabilitation and reconstruction programs in the eastern states. Its work assumed tremendous proportions after the war. One of the most immediate tasks which confronted Gowon after the Civil War was that of organizing emergency relief supplies to the ordinary man emerging from the war. The federal government, through the National Commission for Rehabilitation, NCR, and the Nigerian Red Cross Society, performed admirably well. They fed, clothed, and provided medical care for the ordinary citizen. Their work was made a bit easier by the cooperation of individual Nigerians and state governments all over the country who donated food, cash, and other forms of aid towards providing relief for their brothers. State governments, churches, individuals all across the country donating food, money, drugs, medicine to get across to their quote-unquote brothers are the ones being insulted in 2025. Thus, by the end of the war, Nigeria had confidence to tell the world that what she needed was not food. The Nigerian Red Cross, I'll tell you again, thus by the end of the war, Nigeria had confidence to tell the world that what she needed was not food. The Nigerian Red Cross was feeding about 700,000 people daily in the eastern states. It had also stockpiled 13,000 tons of food and was assembling another 7,000 tons by the end of January 1970. As Nigeria's Commissioner for Information, Chief Anthony Enaro, clearly pointed out in January 1970, Nigeria's immediate needs were for assistance aimed at solving acute transportation problems and reopening public utilities and restoration of social services, not food. Britain's offer of 20 vehicles was very helpful at this stage of relief operations. In his broadcast at the end of the war, Gowon had called for volunteers. Gowon had called for volunteers, doctors, nurses, engineers, technicians, builders, plumbers, mechanics, administrators, and skilled hands. In a short time, 15 doctors and 50 nurses were rushed to the Igbo heartland to embark on mercy operations alongside 900 Nigerian Red Cross officials and 114 foreign Red Cross officials. In addition, the federal government made available 2 million naira, that is 1 million Nigerian pounds then, for relief activities. The warmth of reception accorded the secessionists back into the Nigerian fold was amply demonstrated by the magnitude of donations made to war relief activities. So impressed was the British Parliamentary Under-Secretary for Foreign Affairs, Mr. Maurice Foley, with Nigeria's post-war efforts he witnessed during his visit that he confessed, quote, "I have been moved by the spirit of reconciliation and brotherhood which is guiding the Nigerian people and their leaders," end of quote. The observer team also confirmed this impression. According to this team, there was no evidence of genocide in the newly liberated areas visited. In fact, they noted that, quote, within the limitations of available transport, federal troops are carrying food to where it is most needed and refugees wherever possible, end of quote. The relief operations were effectively handled by Nigerians within the period of the first 3 months. If Gowon had been angry with the famous quote-unquote humanitarians, let them keep their blood money. That's what he said. We don't need their help. We can do it ourselves. The way the relief exercise was handled buttressed his confidence in Nigerians. In a major act of reconciliation, Gowon announced details of reunion. For public servants, there were a number of categories. A, all those secessionists who were members of the Eastern Nigerian Public Service should return to their respective state governments for reabsorption. B, federal civil servants transferred to the former Eastern Nigerian Public Service should report in the first instance to their respective state governments for reabsorption. They were eligible for absorption in the Federal Civil Service if they so desired and applied through their state public service commissions for transfer to federal service. C, federal officers on posting to federal offices in the former Eastern Nigeria should report at Benin, Calabar, Enugu, and Port Harcourt to the respective state governments as agents of the federal government. State governments will then advise appropriate federal ministries and departments, which will then issue instructions to officers concerned. D, those public servants who left posts without formal transfer and who had therefore been dismissed or had their appointments terminated were to register with respective state governments and apply through these for reinstatement in federal public service if they so desired. And E, officials of statutory corporations were to be covered by the above categories. The federal government was at pains to point out that reabsorption into federal and state public services would not prejudice the career prospects of those who remained in their post throughout the crisis to serve the country. All right, so that's what they did even in the civil service after all the stuff that that Ironsi did as head of state. I read just one more push. Okay, just a few more things. With emergency relief activities completed, there's a lot that I'm jumping on because of time. When we have the full session, I promise to read some of these things. With emergency relief activities completed, the federal government now turned more effectively to the issue of rehabilitation and reconstruction of war-damaged areas, which had been going on since 1968. In addition, it had to embark on the reactivation and development of the rest of the economy that had suffered because of the war, which had punctuated normal development process. The typical problems of rehabilitation and resettlement as enunciated by the FMG included, number one, the disabled and the needy who had to be cared for in special institutions or for longer periods. 2, persons whose means of livelihoods were seriously disrupted by the war. 3, demobilized armed forces personnel to be trained and placed in gainful employment in civilian life. Number 4, productive assets damaged or dislocated during the war to be resuscitated as a matter of urgency. And 5, restoration of dislocated and damaged infrastructural services such as roads, ports, rail, and airports. In achieving the above objectives, the National Commission for Rehabilitation of the Nigerian Red Cross, as well as the Nigerian Armed Forces, played important roles. As a first step towards tackling post-war economic problems and tasks of rehabilitation and reconstruction, Gowon announced his post-war budget. In his budget speech, Gowon announced a total revenue of 556 million naira to an expenditure of 536 million naira, thus creating a surplus of 20 million naira. Who is responsible for what we just read is actually Awolowo. Why? He was Minister of Finance. He was the one who ensured that no money was borrowed throughout the war and that in 1970, Nigeria had a budget surplus. We're going to jump to the things that he did and Oluwao. Sorry, I don't even know. What was the last thing you heard? Sorry about that. I think it's the app. The app does that sometimes. I apologize. Please, what was the last thing you heard me say? Because I was just reading away. If you don't mind, please. I was reading about the rehabilitation work that was done and that was carried out and the money that was given. I don't know if you got that bit. So I was reading how from abroad Nigeria got 64.6 million naira, and federal government rehabilitation and special currency grants totaled 33.14 million naira. Then it says here, University of Nsukka received 12 million naira for its reconstruction, while 6 million naira was spent on rehabilitation of industries. The African Continental Bank, ACB, was granted 5 million naira for its reopening. And I was saying that, you can't say that that couldn't have been better, but I think it's demonic to not acknowledge the good that was done. All in the name of saying, oh, we could have had better. Like, you're not even acknowledging that anything was done. A lot was done. Schools were rebuilt. Things were, put together. Roads were built. Industries were rebuilt. Banks were funded. And the ACB I mentioned right now, that's Azikiwe's bank. If you read Awolowo's book, it said 3.5 million pounds. That would be about 7 million naira. Apart from the money that went into Cooperative Bank of Eastern Nigeria, a lot was done. And yes, Awo was Minister of Finance. Yes, Mark Blitz. So it's important to acknowledge some of these things. So we don't let people just blackmail us with all this. There's no federal presence. There's federal presence. There's federal presence. There's no state in the southeast that doesn't have more than 2, 3, 4. Some have more than 4 federal institutions in that state. And the whole of this eastern region is the size of Oyo State. You have federal universities, federal polytechnics, federal colleges of education, and when it's time to employ people, it's nepotism all the way. We know these things. You have roads, you have bridges. Is this enough? Of course not. Can more be done? Of course, yes. More needs to be done, but it's not just about that region, it's about the entire country. There are many parts of the country that you wonder when people say things like, oh, we're being marginalized. Like, what do you have? Sorry, what is it that you don't have that Kebbi has? What is it that Oyo State has from the federal government that your state does not have? And you have comparative advantage in it. So I think it's important to have these conversations. Yeah, teaching hospitals, there are things there. This last budget, the school that got the most money in the entire country was Nsukka. And it was that same school that was complaining about something for dental students, accreditation, some things were not done because we don't know where the money went. But people have been conditioned to always point to the government or something outside themselves to read their problem. Therefore, they would never look inwards to see where the real issue is. But all the best to everyone. All right, let me answer some of the questions in the comment section before we go. Someone, I think it was Oba Chief D.I. says, what book am I reading from? The question is, at what point did you ask this question? That's the real issue now. The last book I read is called Go On, The Biography of a Soldier Statesman by J. Samuel Ligo. By the way, if you want those books, you can check out Redomi Books on Telegram. They ship books everywhere in the world. So check, the books are hard copies though. Okay, so check Redomi Books on Telegram. You'll find that particular book. All right, and others as well. So, in your company, I can't see what you wrote again, but I think I remember the question. Adamorisha. He said, what is Yoruba agenda or game plan in or outside Nigeria or outside? Oh, boy, you go. No, Adekomi, don't worry about the list of books. Don't worry. Thank you, though. I think he's asking about the particular stuff. Thank you. So the Morisha says, what is your agenda or game plan in or outside Nigeria? I mean, our plan is what you are saying. Our desire within Nigeria, of course, is to have the country structured. I mean, Yoruba people have been consistent for more than, I don't know, for more than 70 years actually, on the need for federalism, right? That's the thing. If you really think about it, we have been consistent on the need for federalism, considering the nature of Nigeria and the reality of its and the reality of the country itself. The fact that it has multiple ethnicities. And not only have we said we wanted federalism, we've also said the kind of federalism we want. And I said something yesterday, regionalism is not necessarily synonymous with federalism. What we had before independence or in the First Republic is an example of federalism, not the definition of federalism. It's just an example, it's a type. There are other types. And the type that Yoruba people have always wanted and always canvassed for is the one that benefits every group in Nigeria. Not just for Yoruba people alone. Every group is fine. Every group is taken care of when you have that kind of structure. Anything else is actually people being parasites. And what kind of structure is that? It's ethno-linguistic federalism. If you don't do that, you're going to have several nations bickering and trying to break away from Nigeria, which is what is happening right now. Howard said this way back 1947. In his very first book. I think he wrote the book in 45, but the book was published in 47. That we've got to have ethno-linguistic states or regions or whatever you want to call it, something similar to what you have in Switzerland or in Belgium or in Canada or in the UK. I don't know why it has taken us this long and we still don't have that structure. And people just don't like to even talk about it. But you're right, we have been consistent, and thank God we had and we still have leaders who work based on ideology and who have like fantastic political thought. So if you ask me, what do we want? That's what we want. Now, how do we get there? That's a totally different conversation. And we talked about that yesterday, and I said some of those things, I don't know if it's time to say them in public, but the truth of the matter is that there are two ways to it. One of those ways has already been done by the president, which is the creation of, it's still not ethno-linguistic by the way, but it's based on geopolitical zones in Nigeria, where every geopolitical zone now has a development commission. The funny thing, or the interesting thing I should say, is that what Nigeria is now doing in 2025 to give everybody, oh dear Lord, please give me a second, please. I think I should play, let me just play you something while I switch over. I really have to. I might be no. I remember where I stopped. I'm going to continue from there. I don't know if you can hear the beeping sound. Where were we? It's going to be very quick, please. Number. Can we push the I'm not ready to do anything. Quickly respond to some of the things in the comment section. Someone says, can we push the referendum for them? No, we can't, and I'll tell you why. So you have a person who is not ready to do anything. He's not ready to leave. He's just puffing and puffing. It's all smoke. There's nothing. There's no substance to his rant. He's saying he wants to leave. His representatives are not pushing for that thing. He insults people on social media and says, what is it, this about the Southwest, all this Lagos, all this Nigeria, we don't even want it. Then somebody says, you must go. Then they say the person is a bigot. You say you want to leave. I say you can go. Now you're calling me a bigot. It means that you never wanted to live in the first place. You're just a clown. As a matter of fact, clowns have more sense than that. The point is, it's not really about that thing you think they want. It's leverage for something else. Somebody came in the other time and said, in fact, let me read what he said, because I don't know if you guys think about this thing before you say it. Mr. Goodman, you call yourself. You said, why can't you guys accept that there is a great injustice against the Igbo since after the war? Tell me that injustice. What is that injustice that has been meted out to Igbo people since 1970? Tell me. You had the vice presidency in 79. The only thing you have not had since 70 is presidency. And that thing is not a toy. It's not, we're not in a gift shop where you can just take. This is not Oprah. This is not Oprah Winfrey's TV show. Hey, you get to be president, you also get to be president. So, Yoruba people president, Hausa president, Igbo president. There is no gift shop here. And the Hausas have not been president since 1990. As a matter of fact, they're not been president ever. There's no Hausa president in Nigeria's history. What? All right, I'm back. So we listened to that earlier today anyway. If you'd like to listen to it again, please watch the video once we're done, or you can also find the other video. You can also watch the full one. That's Referendum, Marginalisation, £20 and Igbo Presidency. So this is the audio. The video is also up there. All right. What was I saying before I left though? Abi, you still want to listen to this? Maybe I should just keep playing it. I was talking about something. Okay, yeah. I was talking about Yoruba plans for in Nigeria. And so there's this consistency that you notice with the position of the Yoruba political class, which has always been that you number one, acknowledge that we are a group of nations. We're a country made up of several nations, and then create a structure that factors that into whatever it is you're doing. So you can, just like you can have Scotland and all kinds of, Wales and all in the UK, you can also have Yoruba region. And you will not say it's tribalism. To call that tribalism, it should be a dance. Because what that means basically is that we have to ask you a question. What is the definition, or what would you prefer? And every single person who was against that thing, and who are still against it now, what they really want is to take advantage of what belongs to other people. And they do that because in their mindset, there's something called scarcity mentality. If you have that, and this is not about a particular ethnic group, any group who is against the actualization of something like that, to be honest, for the most part, has a parasitic mindset and a scarcity mentality, which essentially thrives on taking what belongs to others, not to, get ahead in whatever, whether in life or whatever. So, but I said earlier that the way to actualize those things, I think there are two paths, right? Two parts, rather. The first part is what we now have, which is the development commissions across the regions in Nigeria. Now, that's not exactly what we want, but that's a good step that they've taken. But I was saying before I had to go away that when you look at it, what everybody is getting today in 2025 in the name of Northwest Development Commission, Northeast Development Commission, North Central, Southeast, Southwest, South Development Commission, what we are getting now was what Yoruba people put together in 2013 called Dawn Agenda, or Dawn Commission rather, Developmental Agenda for Western Nigeria, Dawn Commission. We already created that. So we have a 12-year head start. They've spent a lot of work brainstorming. I was opportune to be with some of the founding members some time ago, and some of those people humble you. You discover that like what irks you about the present condition of Nigeria, you're not the only one who feels that way. And that beyond just feeling that way, as you're thinking about solutions, others are also thinking about solutions. And that somehow makes you understand the fact that you're not the only one. It's like Elijah said to God, I'm the only one, and Jezebel wants to kill me, and don't you see what's happening? And God said to him, I have 7,000. other prophets who have not bowed their knees to Baal. The idea basically is that you're not the only one. There are other people, and in a way, it humbles you. In another way, I think it also comforts you. So basically, 12 years of work, right? They've had plans. They have plans set in motion. I have a document that was produced by Dunn Commission way back that talks about the kind of plans they have for the region. Now that we now have Southwest Development Commission, all they have to do is to work together. So one has a blueprint, the other one has the money, because the federal government budgets a particular amount for every development commission across Nigeria. So Southwest Development Commission has some will get the money from the federal government, but then there's a vision and blueprint on ground, and they're also working with the Southwest governors. So that makes a lot of sense. Allows for growth. So that's the first part. The other part is what has to do with that ethno-linguistic core. That one is the solution. How do you put that now? The way to accomplish that is the exact same way they got the Southwest Development Commission. It's going to be through the legislature. And like I said the other day, some of these things are boring. Some of these things, don't seem like it doesn't look like anything is changing, but things are literally changing around you. You just don't notice until to be. So that's the plan that when I say that Yoruba people have, I'm not just saying that I have. The beautiful thing is that when you write things down and you plan stuff and you have vision for your place, and then you hear elders and they're saying the same thing, it gives you joy, and you discover that it's not just you thinking that way. There are leaders of thought in Yoruba land who have that plan. The other part you are asked is what about when Yoruba outside Nigeria? That one, I don't have that conversation. I don't have such conversations online. Because according to Nigeria's constitution, this country is indissoluble, right? If you want to change the status quo, you want to change the structure, or you want to change that particular narrative, it's going to take more than just saying things. It's a very, very serious stuff, and that particular thing, I don't think it's conversations that can just be had. But if you ask me, what I can say is, if Nigeria were to cease to exist today, let's say it happens. By the way, I believe that if we have ethno-linguistic states, everybody will mind their business. And we're not the first people who have had to do this. Canada literally had to do this. And I had a session here the other day when I was reading the book by Papa, that's Chief Awolowo. The book is titled The Nigerian Constitution. Is that the title? Yeah, something like that, Nigeria's Constitution. And you see how different countries across the world, they did a research in the 50s and the 60s, looking at different countries across the earth, this entire planet, and the kind of structures that each of them had at the time. And I'll say this, having read that book and other books I've tried with Awo's book, I think it's important that all of us read Awo's books. By the way, you can get those books on Referendum Books. Shameless plug. I'm saying this because I think more of us need to read more of these things together so that we can form a critical mass. But here's the point. There is no country on earth, to the best of my knowledge, and I don't even think it exists at all, that is multi-ethnic, that operates the structure Nigeria has and is successful. There is none. In the study in the 50s and 60s, they didn't find any. In my own study in 2025, there is none. Any multi-ethnic state like Nigeria that operates like Nigeria cannot succeed. It's not because it's not a curse. It's a structural problem. The structure does not allow for growth. And the earlier we understood that, the better for all of us. So outside the country, so going to the second part of your question, so if Nigeria were to cease existing, we'll be fine. No, we'll be fine. There's a book I've never read here. It's a book by Victor Taiwo, Nigeria and the Cake of Gunpowder. He has some fantastic solutions in that book as well. But yeah, whatever happens, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. I don't think we give ourselves credit enough, to be honest. I don't think a lot of us know what people are doing on the ground. Don't be moved by those who shout on social media and curse everybody out and say we have a plan. For the most part, they don't have anything. Agba people lo man do. But I mean, seriously, there are things that are being done, and if you care to know, if you can go to the website, Dawn Commission, for instance, SWDC, and then see some of those things. We can talk about Nigeria here, but anything about breaking and everything is not a conversation for this forum. Are they coming to say Singapore did it? Not exactly. So Singapore's case is a bit different. Singapore is a city-state. They acknowledged it, by the way. They acknowledged the same thing, but they didn't have to. They didn't have to do what I'm talking about. What Canada did, Singapore didn't have to do that, because Singapore already has a clear advantage of 75% Chinese. And then you had the Malays and Indians making up about 22%. 15%, 7%, about 22% in all. 22 plus 75, that's 97. So the other Kenya is just tourists and foreign visitors, but generally is Chinese 75%, then 22% between Malays and Indians. So there was a clear majority already for Singapore. They didn't have to restructure in that sense. What they had to do, interestingly, was to be careful of how they allocated flats and apartments to different ethnicities across Singapore. You know, when you read some of these books by these people, you just discover that all this tribalism, bigotry that people say, a lot of us are ignorant all along. A lot of us are ignorant. Do you know, fun fact, do you know that in Singapore, you know, they have these HDB flats, right? They have these high-rise buildings because, of course, they want to make sure everybody has a roof over their heads. Every of those high-rise buildings have quotas that relate to ethnicity. There's an amount of Chinese. There's a way they are very intentional about these things, but we don't even want to talk about those things, because for us that's bigotry. That's a first world. I mean, it was a third world like us in 65. It's a first world country in 2025. In one generation, we're not ready. But I think, but to be fair, there are also people who are ready, and the ones who are also, we who are learning these things, all of us here right now, we are not few. I know we are growing, and we're going to reach that critical mass. These conversations must be had. Ethnicity is a major factor in nation building. Singapore understood that. And like I've said several times, personally, after Awo is my, as far as politics is concerned in this world, that's the man. After him, for me, is Lee Kuan Yew. And if you listen to that man and you read his books, maybe one of these days we should even read some of his books. I mean, I refer to him a lot. Maybe we should read some of his books. We can start with from third to first word, from third word to first word. He has some fantastic books, by the way. The point I'm trying to make is that both of them are very, very honest about the place of ethnicity in nation building. The clowns who always tell you it doesn't matter are people who have never built anything that succeeds in their lives. They've never. And if they ever did it, they did it because somebody else did it. They just took over. And if they ever did it, they did it in their own corner. And if you really see the people that say it doesn't really matter, check they always fill their places with their own people from their ethnicity, which tells you they know that this thing matters. They just have this stupid rhetoric of, so that we don't appear to be bigoted. This is not bigotry, this is wisdom. And if we have that structure, I think Nigeria is going to grow and nobody will be bickering. And once you begin to think of that, naturally you start talking about resource control. You start talking about autonomy. You're talking about different nations within one country, right? Once you have that, a bit of control, I mean, it doesn't mean that nobody will want to secede, because even today Scotland wants to secede. But it will be on a different ground. It won't be because of underdevelopment or all these, structural issues that we're having. There will be other reasons. For folks in Scotland, for instance, it's primarily self-determination. It's about identity for them, and it makes a lot of sense. So even Scotland today wants to have referendum. That could happen, but The UK has that in their constitution. They have that clause. We don't have it. To ask for secession right now is to commit treason. And the person who said we must not have that secession is a man called Zik. He said it in 1954. Ẹkáàbọ was talking about inclusion of secession clause in 54, and he said, let our constitution, and he was quoting, he was using these people as example. Russia, I was talking about the Russian Federation, the Soviet Union at the time. But Zik was shouting justice chase using Texas. Of all countries, he didn't even use US. He was comparing us to Texas. You know, oh my show. We've had a lot of short-sighted, myopic people in charge. And to make it worse, in 1975, Zik granted an interview and he was talking about the event of 54, and he was saying it with glee. 75 was 5 years after the Civil War. He was saying like he did something sensible in 54. He said that he introduced the word, the perpetuity of the Union. Okay, now it's perpetual. What have you gotten out of it? Now your people are crying, they want to break out. Nobody is allowing anybody to break out. Why? It is unconstitutional. And if everybody begins to go against the constitution, then that means that constitution has no value. Then anybody can live anyhow they like. So that's why when people say things like, let them allow them to go, I'm like, what do you think you are talking about? This is not a military regime where a person can just give you decrees. If you are going to change anything in the constitution, you have to go by the provisions that you have in the constitution. Which means somebody has to sponsor a bill that will recommend, provision for secession, and you have to go through the whole 9 yards, and then you get it. And it's not impossible. I mean, we got Amotekun. It's the same process, by the way. It's the exact same process. But people know what it looks like. That's why they're always telling you, why not you do it for us? How would I do it for you? Am I your father? If you want to go, somebody, in fact, as we were listening to that recording earlier, someone was just saying, someone just wrote on the Facebook comment, in one of the Facebook videos, it says, let us go. And I was like, if you really want to go, you know what to do. You have 58 representatives in Abuja, 43 House of Reps members, 15 senators. Let one of them push that bill. And while they are working on it, get on the next bus. You can hop on the next bus and go back home. Nobody invited you. They'll not miss you when you leave. I hate it when people just go around constituting the nuisance, telling people, why let us go. Nobody's holding anybody back. The issue is that there's no provision for that in the constitution. But once that is sorted, anybody can move. But the point is, while all of that is happening, you can also really work on the structure of the nation. I think if we do that, we'll be fine. And that's the position of the Yoruba people, and we've been consistent for more than 50 years, and that's a flex. Hopefully that works. And the other part, I have things to say, but not here. Thank you very much for that question, and I hope I answered. If I didn't, please feel free to let me know, and whatever it is that you think I should have said, if I think it aligns with what we can see on the platform, I shall delve into that. I'll read a few more comments on YouTube. Someone says Nigeria is a country of primitive tribalism. When are you going to leave? How can we help you leave? I don't know. Well, it's not a country of primitive. It's not a country. It's not a country of primitive tribalism. Okay, let me put it this way. Maybe in some cases, because I have to be very careful. Maybe in some parts you will see primitive tribalism, and you'll be right. You'll be right. But I think the reason we call it tribalism is because we expect too much from others. And that's the thing. We act as if we are not humans. We act as if we are better. Let me find a way to say. So there is nature, right? There is a way things happen naturally. We want to prove that there's something about us that defies the laws of nature. So we have spent the last 60, 70 years proving that ridiculous point rather than growing. And in proving that ridiculous point, we now busy ourselves with, checking out if the other person is also trying to do it, and if they're not doing it, then they're tribalist. If I'm doing it, I'm not tribalist. And so we have like tribalism watchers, just looking for when you're going to, which is a total waste of time. Every other country, why? This is a question to people. Why did Malaysia essentially chase Singapore away. Why? Why? Sincerely, simple question. A simple answer is ethnicity. They were talking about before then. The goal was to have a what's the word they were calling multi-ethnic space. I mean, they still have multi-ethnic. There's still Chinese in Malaysia. You have Indians in Malaysia, but Malaysia is about 65% Malays. So they're able to determine what they want according to their culture. Minorities will have their say. Majority will have their way. And one of the major reasons for the breakup was ethnicity. And look at Malaysia today, look at Singapore today. Someone says, when are you going to leave? How can we help you leave? Exactly, that's a question for those who want to leave. And to be honest, Erobo Doloro Yoba, like whatever comes our way, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, no matter what happens, we'll be fine. We'll be fine. So whether in here or out of this contraption, whatever it is, your wife will be fine. But and the good thing, and I'm not saying this like someone who's just thinking that I will be fine, we'll be fine. They are literal, especially for what happens within Nigeria. Our plans are beautiful. They are beautiful plans, and not just plans of people just building castles in the air. I'm saying things that are literally, being discussed in the corridors of power. So it's a beautiful thing to know. Someone says, I love to see Nigeria return back to RG. The best times of Nigeria was during regional government. Yes, but like I said, maybe not that kind of regional government. Sincerely, if you were with us when we were discussing what happened between AWU and SLA, then and how the federal government got involved in the Western region issues, then you understand why even what we had in the First Republic was not the ideal. It wasn't the ideal. There is no way the federal government should be able to get into what's happening in the regions at that level. When we discuss regional level, when we discuss regional government, do you know what we really think about, if we have been honest with ourselves? We think of 1952 to 1959. That's what we are really thinking. A lot of us, we don't, maybe we don't realize it, but most of what you're saying you like about regional government is between 52 and 59. Awo became leader of government business in 1952. He became premier in 54, and he stopped being premier at 59-60. And then, 59 essentially, December 59. Then SLA took over in 60. All the grand things that you are thinking of happened before independence. So every other thing that happened after independence was built on the foundation laid before then. So you are thinking maybe of Cocoa House that was eventually finished in 65, or Ife that was opened in 62, and things like that. Those things happened. Those things, what's before independence. The point I'm trying to make is that the regional government, the structure we had then, was not even good enough. So when Yoruba people today are talking about regional government, we have to also understand what regionalism really is. Regionalism is ethno-linguistic, forget region, ethno-linguistic states. The word region can even be confusing. That's why Awo in his book said the nomenclature doesn't matter. It could be region, it could be province, it could be state, it could be whatever. But ethno-linguistic states. In other words, the constituent units are ethno-linguistic, and it's not, unless you are not a human being, there is no big deal about this. You shouldn't have a problem with it, or no. And I know people that are always having a problem with it. You have to be very, very, it is well to have a problem with that, sincerely. What does it mean? I mean, essentially, like what you have everywhere in the world where things are working. And I've said it several times, we have conversations in Nigeria like, have you been to Kinikon? Have you been to Kinikon? We talk about places we visited, but we don't talk about structures we've studied. We talk about the infrastructure we are observing, but we don't talk about the structures that make them work. And the things you can't see are more important than the things that you can see. Those things are working because of the unseen system. That system is what we should be building in Nigeria. And we'll get the Lagbar along. Okay, I think I've answered all the questions. Let's check Facebook if there's anything there. Thank you, everyone. We have these sessions every day, by the way, Mondays to Friday, every weekday, Mondays to Friday, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Tomorrow we'll be on camera. we're going to end the session. We're going to end this the series. If we don't end the series tomorrow, then maybe there's just a little bit I want to cover on Friday. But okay, let me just announce that tomorrow I'm going to continue with the series, How Nigeria's First Republic Ended. We're reading the book by Shehu Shagari, Beckon to Say. We're also reading On a Darkling Plain by Ken Sariwa. So we'll see, and then other books as well. But Shehu Shagari's book is the primary source. So that will be tomorrow at 4 p.m. if your time West African time. So please join us for that session. Tomorrow will be part 9. It's going to be, it promises to be, exciting. Also, Friday we're going to have Referendum Republic recording. So if you want to contest in the quiz, there's going to be a quiz game show. Quiz or game show. Please go to Linktree on your browser. Go to Linktree/Referendum Republic, and you'll be able to register. Okay, all you have to do is just fill a form. The first link is a form. Click on it, fill it, and then we will reach out to you and let you know when you're coming up. That will be on Friday at 4 p.m. You should register today, but we are having the recording, as it were. All you have to do is have a TikTok account, be able to show your face on camera, and in a place that's not noisy, and then just come up, answer a few questions, and make some money. That will be on Friday. Tomorrow, How Nigeria's First Republic Ended, Part 9. Please go to Referendum Republic on YouTube and subscribe. Watch our first episode. It's beautiful, it's funny, it's lovely, it's wonderful, it's all the superlatives you can think of. So please check it out. Our first episode is up on Referendum Republic YouTube channel. Yeah, so please check that out. Kindly subscribe, and also subscribe to Busui Oris on YouTube. We're trying to push all these channels to do different things so that we can, with the quiz, we can learn all these things in a fun way. With this channel, it's more podcast. All right. Okay, so we're going to call it a day now. We'll be here tomorrow, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Please join us. Before we go, we're going to listen to the anthems, right? Nigerian anthem and Yoruba anthem. I'm really praying that all these dreams that people have had, that in our generation will see the fulfillment of these things, because things have to change, and may God help us. Sorry about that. That was the app being funny. I don't know if it's better now, Sha. Anyway, I'm just going to play the Nigerian anthem. If you don't know, please learn the lyrics. Let's sing along.
Nigeria, we hail thee, our own dear native
àwa ni ìmọ́lẹ̀ ògo adúláwọ̀, ìmọ́lẹ̀ wo ni wọ́kùn lágbára Ọlọ́run, ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ò ní bàjẹ́, Nàìjíríà náà ò ní bàjẹ́, nǹkan tó bá dáwọ́lé a máa yọrí sí rere ni o. Bá a ṣe ń ro àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ tá à ń jíròrò náà, Ọlọ́run ràn wá lọ́wọ́. And please, wherever you find yourself, please let these things, guide you in whatever actions, especially as it has to do with nation building and politics. Thank you very much. I'll see you again tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. I'm going to have a great session tomorrow. I'm very sure of that because I've been reading. I think there's some things that you're going to like to hear when we meet tomorrow. Do have a lovely, lovely evening. See you at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. God bless you. Bye-bye.